Nightmare on Elm Street, arguably one of the best horror franchise and one of the most iconic horror icons that we have out there in Freddy Krueger. Here are my thoughts for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1. Now, I'm an old guy. Again, I'm a Gen Xer. I was born in 77. So, to be honest, I remember seeing Halloween for the first time. The image I have striking in my brain is when Michael stood up with Laurie kind of leaning against that door, and Michael stood up, done up. That was my introduction to Michael Myers. I actually, for a while when I was younger, got Michael Myers and Jason confused because they kind of look the same way, right? They have that stoic posture and they have the white face. But the one horror icon that actually captured my imagination and gave me nightmares was Freddy Krueger.
This is God.
Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 came out in 1984, and it was my sister, of all people, who's 10 years older than me, who introduced me to Freddy Krueger. Believe it or not, she came home from the movies one day from a date, and she was just terrified, and she was telling me about a movie about a guy, a monster, who had knives coming out of his hand, who would attack you in your dreams. And if you died in your dreams, you died in real life. Can you imagine what that did to this 7-year-old when he first heard that? It scared the hell out of me, and I was terrified to dream, because think about it. When you're younger, your imagination goes crazy. You're having nightmares already, and to throw that element into your brain, it messed me up for quite some time. Of course, I didn't see it at the movies. There was no VHS at the time. I saw it on HBO with my cousins. And there are many times in a man's life where you have baptism by fire. That was my night when it came to horror, and Freddy Krueger scarred me for quite some time. And of course, there's a lot of nostalgia when it comes to Freddy Krueger in this movie, but in my opinion, seeing it again after a few years and seeing it with adult eyes, it is a classic, but it's flawed. And I'll explain why. And before I get there, I want to talk about what I love about Nightmare on Elm Street. First off, of course, the acting. Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger. I am one of the fortunate few people who actually have met him and spoken to him quite some time. I was his assistant in one of the Comic-Cons here in San Antonio. Here's a photo. Now, I didn't speak to him every minute of every day, but I did have pockets of time where I can speak with him. And I actually overheard him talking to his fans who were signing autographs and signing posters, and he was there asking questions. So I heard a lot of his own feedback. And get this, just FYI, in case you didn't know, if you ever meet him and you want him to sign like a glove, a Freddy Krueger glove, they charge like $200 to $300 per autograph, because people take that glove with the autograph and sell it on eBay for $1,000. From what he told me and other fans, he said he approached Freddy Krueger like one of a gunslinger in the Western. That's why he kind of dipped his shoulder. But he also said he dipped his shoulder when he walked because a glove, they call it the hero glove, it was so heavy, he kind of dipped his shoulder, but he used the weight of the glove to walk in like a cowboy in a Western town, like that stranger, the man with no name, like Clint Eastwood. So he kind of used that, knowing that his silhouette was going to be used prominently in the movie. So he thought that would add some fear to the character, which, if you tell me, it paid off. He also mentioned that Freddy Krueger, the actual name, is actually named after a bully Wes Craven had when he was growing up, and that there was science behind the color of his sweater. The red and green, apparently through retinal scanning, are the most striking images of color that the eye and brain can react to. So there was all the scientific approach with not just the color, the design, but also the way he posed and the way he stood. So a lot went into Freddy Krueger, more than you know. And of course, Nightmare on Elm Street wouldn't be where it's at if it wasn't for Robert Englund. His approach to the character, the fun he had, really helps him stand out as, in my opinion, one of the best horror icons out there. He has personality. Hey, and personality goes a long way. I also met Amanda Weiss that same year. She was sitting right next to Robert Englund, and I got to help her for a bit. She's an absolutely wonderful woman, and of course, everybody was asking about her death scene. And she had told me that Wes Craven wanted to go with the psycho approach, where you think the main lead is going to be the protagonist throughout the film, but she's killed about halfway through the film, and that's the approach he went with Amanda Weiss' character, Tina. He wanted to shock the audience, and if you ask me, he did. And then she showed me a book that she carried around to every convention. It was a booklet with photos from the actual set. And in that booklet, she had photos of where they had Yus Garcia, I believe the guy who played Rod Lane in the movie, where he was pretty much in a chair on the ground, and they had to seatbelt him in, hairspray his hair down because his hair was so curly, and it would go up when the rotating room would go upside down. So they had to hairspray everything down on him, and they also had to staple the bed and the sheets, everything down, the frames, everything. But mainly, if you look closely in the shot, you can see that there's edged corners, hard angles on the bed. That's because the bed and sheets were stapled in starch. But Amanda's a wonderful woman. We got to talk a long time, and I met her on a couple of occasions. So, Amanda, if you're watching this, hi, it's Rudy. Of course, I can't go on without mentioning Heather Langenkamp, who played Nancy. She's like the ultimate final girl. She fought back. She kicked ass. She set traps. Burned Freddy alive. She actually kicked his ass. But what I love about her, there's a strength at the end. There's also a vulnerability. But again, what you don't get a lot with a lot of final girls is I'm not going to take any more shit and I'm going to fight back. And I love that, being that she in the film is only like a high schooler senior. And that is, we need more of that. Give us more of that, Hollywood. And of course, we can't go on without mentioning Johnny Depp, who played Glenn. And this was also his first movie. Believe it or not, the actor who they already were considering but wanted too much money. He wanted $3,000 a week, and they couldn't afford it because this movie technically was a low-budget movie and had a shooting schedule of 32 days, was Charlie Sheen, and they couldn't do it, so they got this one guy, as Wes Craven said in the commentary, this rock guy who played guitar he's from Miami. We flew him in, and he was pale and skinny and pasty, but he did great. He read well with Heather, so we went forward with it, and he was cheap, and that ended up being Johnny Depp himself. And of course, you guys know this. If you've been following me for a while, I love movie scores. I play them throughout the day. Here's my set list if you just want to go ahead and see it. And you can also follow it on Spotify if you want. But Charles Bernstein created an amazing haunting score for Nightmare on Elm Street. And by the way, he also did it for Cujo and The Entity, which is an underrated horror movie. You should check that out. But when a score is memorable and it creates an identity for a franchise, it just adds a soul to the horror movie, which in this case, the man did. So again, one of the best scores of all time. And now what I don't like about it, and this is not going to be a surprise, it's really the ending. The ending makes no sense. Wes Craven went on record and said many times that he was really adamant and hated the ending and the numerous endings they shot because, again, the studio thought they wanted to make a franchise with it, so they were persistent on creating that cliffhanger ending, which is very sloppy. And again, in hindsight, knowing all the backstory, you can definitely see that. I think the logic ends when Heather pulls Freddy out from the dream because, again, they set up that he can take the hat and a few other things. So Freddy's in the real world. She's kicking his ass with all the traps. She burns him alive. He should technically die at that moment, and that should be it, right? But no, he goes to Heather. He goes to the mom's bedroom, who she's passed out on liquor. And because of the liquor and alcohol in her system, Freddy lays on her, and it creates this purity of blue flame under the bed. And they go under the bed. And no, she turns into a skeleton. And the skeleton sinks into the bed and it starts lightning and it seals away. And you can see poor John Saxon just like, what the fuck am I looking at? I mean, what did that make sense? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And then the next scene, Heather obviously doesn't give Freddy any power by ignoring him. You defeated him, but then the ending just totally just ruins the film. It's shocking. Yes, when I was younger, I saw it. It scared me, especially when the mom being pulled into the the window of the door. It scared me as a kid, okay? But as I got older, it was funny, okay? But it scared me as a kid. But the ending just kind of breaks its own rules and mythology, and everything that had been set up until that point that I mentioned paid off, but then the rest didn't make any sense. And in closing, Nightmare on Elm Street is unique in a sense, and I think it stands out above all the other horror franchises because the inventiveness that Wes Craven had by reading those articles of people really dying, fearing that if they went to bed, they would be killed, and then it happened. Taking that concept and creating a monster like Freddy can haunt anybody throughout the world. I don't care what language you speak, just hearing the mythology and what Freddy is will capture anybody's imagination and give them nightmares. Unlike Michael Myers and Jason and Chucky, who, again, if he attacked me, I'd just pick him up by his feet and throw him in a closet. But, all you need to do is have a good stride and, just keep your distance. Freddy will catch you. Ultimately, you have to rest. You have to sleep. And I think ultimately that's why, in my opinion, Freddy Krueger is the best horror icon of all time. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this look back on Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1. I will be doing another live for Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, another review in the next coming week, so stay tuned for that. If you haven't done so, please subscribe, like the video, put some comments down below. I would love to hear your feedback on this review and what your thoughts were for Nightmare on Elm Street. And I also want to thank a very important person here. I want to thank David Militia for being my 7th Patreon. Thank you. Thank you so much, dude. You're part of a short but awesome list, and I appreciate you very fucking much. You're awesome. Of course, if you'd like to be a Patreon, the link's up below. And not only, just so you know, will it contribute to this channel, but my other channel called Rude Advice, where I give life advice, dating advice, marriage advice. I know it's totally different from my content here. It also goes to my podcast, Rude Advice. It also goes to my TikTok account. So not only are you supporting this movie channel, which is my passion and my escape from that type of conversation, but you're helping me out in the big haul. It means a lot to me. So sincerely, thank you. If you'd like to be a patron and contribute to my, enterprise, it would mean the world to me. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like I said. And I look forward to seeing you next time for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. I may do an opening bit when I'm dancing with the screwdriver. I might.